Show where every week we fight the good fight. Hey, good to see you here. Happy to be here with you. How you doing? I have a guest tonight. I'm very happy to be introducing her. If anyone's been following me for a while, sometimes I have guests, sometimes I don't have guests, sometimes I'll just do my own little private thing. But I like having guests on, and this is someone that I just love having on. This is Debra Jordan-Kauble. Deb, I'm going to have her on just a second, so just brace yourself. Deb is one of the most well-known, and I would say historically important alien abductees. She was the subject of Bud Hopkins' classic work, Intruders. It's published way back in 1987. And that book, by the way, was one of the early abduction studies that saw this whole phenomenon as something ongoing, and that seemed to go through families and generations. So Deb's encounters are very well attested for a number of reasons. First, her story includes very serious and I would say very unfortunate physical side effects, not only to her, but to her dog. And that's very sad. Maybe she can talk about that. It includes multiple witnesses of UFO activity during the whole period when she had her very dramatic close encounter. It also demonstrates, in my view anyway, real evidence of alien mind manipulation of human beings. I hope we can get into that. And it clearly had a powerful and I would say transformative effect on Deb herself. I was lucky to meet Deb about 10 years ago at a public UFO event, and I was able to hang out with her last summer during the filming of the new documentary, The Observers, which we're both in. It was great seeing her again. By the way, Deb is the author of her own book titled Extraordinary Contacts, Life Beyond Intruders. That is a foreword by Yvonne Smith. And Deb has a great website just called debshome.com. And I just want to say one more thing about Deb before we bring her on, if I may. Although it is obvious that she does not go out of her way to court the limelight and draw attention to herself, which is something you definitely get a lot in this field of ours, Deb does not do that. But the thing is, when you get her to talk, she is fearless when it comes to discussing her story and what she thinks about it. She never shies away. And also, in my own opinion, she's just one of these people who makes our community and really our world better just by being in it. So that's my opinion. So Deb Kauble, thank you for being here on the program.
Thank you for asking me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, honestly, this is something that's been nice for me. And we both are in the documentary, The Observers. But truthfully, that's just almost like an excuse for me to have you on here. So I'm glad that we both were in The Observers because I can get you on here and we can talk really about your experience. I mean, it's just an extraordinary thing. And like everyone knows Travis Walton and everyone knows Betty Hill, her case. And I think like in the UFO field, I think everyone knows you, and you like both of them were the subject of a movie. They did a movie about you in the early 90s. But I don't see you as much as Travis. Travis is just at all these events, but you are out there, and I was really glad to see you at when we were filming The Observers, hanging out in sunny California, far from where both of us live.
Definitely. I never when I contacted Bud, I contacted him for help, not for a book or any of the things that came along afterwards. I was desperate, and I just wanted to be normal and have a normal life. And then when he wrote Intruders, I felt kind of obligated to help him. He asked me if I would come with him and do some things with him regarding the book. And I did because I felt obligated to him. He spent 3 years of his life and all of his own money because I didn't have any, with the investigation and everything else. And I thought, okay, now I owe it to this man. He's practically given me my life back, So I did those things. I was very nervous about it. Every time I did it, I still get nervous. I was nervous sitting in the chair in front of the camera when I did The Observer, because as you correctly noted, I don't go around and speak in public very much about my experience. I am occasionally asked, and I usually say no. First of all, I've worked in the automotive industry for 15 years. So I had like 1 week of vacation that I could spend doing something, going somewhere, so because I had a job. My job was important to me. My job was our income in life, not
Right.
this. And
Right.
so that came first. And my kids came first before they grew up, you know. Um, so I wasn't out around very much. And then once I retired, I had been working on this book, Extraordinary Contact, for several years. And once I retired last September, and I had pretty much gotten it finished, it's just like everything in my life kind of dovetailed. One door, they say one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah. Mhm.
The book got published right away, and things started to happen. And then I made it onto the set of The Observers through Linda Moulton Howe. Linda who I've known for 25 years, met through Bud, and I always felt kind of a connection with her, almost like a sister, and she's
Sure.
always been very protective of me because of my experiences. And there used to be, well, there still is, but back then there was way more stigma attached to it than there is now. And Linda and Bud and all those folks were very protective of people like me. But anyway, she had me on her Earth Files to interview when my book was complete. She also wrote an
Right.
endorsement for it, and was doing what she could do to help me promote it, so I could get it out there to people like me who might benefit from something I said. And then she was approached to do it, and she was asked, of the abductees or experiencers, who would you like to come and be interviewed by you in this production? And she chose me. So that's
Yeah.
how I made it there.
I'm not trying to butter you up, honestly. I'm not, but the thing, I can absolutely see why Linda wanted you as opposed to, I mean, there's other abductees who are, good and they're able to tell their story very well. But, um, I have personally met a number of abductees, and it's so obvious to me. I'm just going to say this: they want attention. They want to be in front of a camera, and it makes me wonder: like, are you being truthful, or are you just trying to grandstand here? And I don't want to malign all alleged abductees. They're not all like that, but in my experience, there are quite a few who are like that. You are definitely not. You've never been like that. You're the opposite of that. And so I think, people just instinctively recognize that about you. And you've got that credibility that when you're doing a documentary on abductions or dealing with that, you want someone who's going to be credible on the camera. And I personally think you do come across that way. By the way, I didn't mention in the introduction, but the producers of The Observers, I think I've got a number of clips of you during your interviews. They're like 50, 60-second clips. And I'd like to show a couple of them. I got them all lined up. I'm not really good at the production stuff of this, but I got this part down. I'd like to be able to show them if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Yeah, they're pretty nice. I think you've seen them anyway. So they're pretty on point, and you come across really well. So I wonder, it's a funny thing, like those of us who live in the UFO field, like we just assume that everyone knows everything about this subject, and the fact is they don't. And it's got to be true. Not only are there people who don't know who you are, there are people who don't know Bud Hopkins was. Like, that's just how it is these days. So I just wonder if you would mind, once again, I know you've done this before, but for this audience to go through like really what happened to you. I mean, this all started 1983 is when the big thing happened. And it's kind of an extraordinary story, frankly. And I just wonder if you could describe it for people.
Sure. I had experiences before that, wasn't quite putting it together, but
Yeah, I misspoke, right? But
that's okay.
this is the one that kind of that triggered everything.
And this is the one that sent me to Bud, that sent me to reach out to him, and that kind of started the whole ball rolling. I was living with my parents. I was a new single mom, and I had 2 little kids, little toddler, and like a 4-year-old or something. And
We're in 1983.
1983. It's been 38 years ago. And
know, right?
I can't even believe it. That's why nobody knows who I am. It's been so long ago. But I was living with my parents, and I was getting ready to go and cut out some patterns for a seamstress friend of mine who she'd given me some spending money to help her cut out patterns so I could help out mom, dad. And I was standing at the window, washing my hands after supper, getting ready to leave. And I noticed a strange light in the pump house of the swimming pool. It was in the backyard. And I noticed, I made mention of it to my mom, and she didn't seem concerned about it. So I gathered up my things and I left. But before I drove away, it was still kind of hanging in the back of my head. So I went down the side driveway in the back turnaround just to have one more look before I left, to make sure there weren't prowlers there. I mean, there was no
the pump house. People who don't know, like, it's just like a little, like a shed, basically, right?
Yeah,
that stores the pump for your pool.
Probably about half the size of a mini barn, one of those aluminum mini barns that you get, in your yard.
And the light was on, and it wasn't supposed to be on.
Exactly. Yeah. I knew it wasn't supposed to be on because I had gone out there earlier to put chlorine in the pool, and I distinctly remember, wrestling with that rusty slide lock to make sure I got it closed, because my old man would have had a cow if he came home and I had left it open. So anyway, I went back around the turnaround just to look, and the light was off. And I thought maybe my mom might have gone out and turned it off, but I did notice that the back door, that there was a garage attached to the house, and there was a back pedestrian door, and I noted that was open. Instead of stopping, I just drove on to Deanna's house, because it was just like one street behind us. It took like,
so wait, the garage was not attached to the pump house.
It was attached to the house. Yeah. So
but that was also open. Yeah.
That was a whole different thing. So when I got to Deanne's house, I called mom, and I said, hey, the pedestrian door of the garage is open. And, we had Penny would go in there at night, my dog, because she was in heat. And so we'd put her in there to keep her other dogs away from her and keep her from roaming around. And my mom said something like, don't worry about it. When your father gets home, he'll take care of it. My dad worked second shift at Ford. He was an electrician, and it was just down the road from where we lived.
It's kind of dark at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, not really dark, but it was in the evening. So by the time I got back, it was dark. Anyway, I went on ahead to Deanne's house, called mom, told her about seeing the door open. She told me, don't worry about it. So I hung up, and then she called right back immediately, and she said, I want you to come home right now. And I thought it's kind of weird, because she sounded weird. She sounded almost nervous or something, and that was out of character for my mother. Nothing scared her.
Like, you had just talked with her. She's like, everything's cool, and then she calls you right back.
And then she calls right back and says, I need you to come home right now. I'm like, what the hell? That's what I literally thought. And my girlfriend's husband, they were both in the same room with me, and they heard my voice kind of start to, panic a little bit. And Larry yelled over my shoulder, hey, tell her to call the police. That's what we pay him for. And they were both in the same room. And she said, no, I don't want anyone here but you. I'm like, okay. So it was creepy, but I went. My kids were there. So, I went. I said, I'll be back. And I left, went back home, pulled up to the side of the house, because this was a tri-level, sandstone tri-level. And the driveway, when you pulled in the front, it split. One part of the drive went down into the front of the garage, the front of the garage door, the front of the house. But then the other side of the drive went alongside the house, down the side drive, past the swimming pool. And then there was a turnaround back in front of a workshop that my old man had. It was a nice setup.
Yeah.
But anyway, I pulled along the side of and stopped right at the Florida room where mom was standing in the door. And I parked the car, got out, went in, and I grabbed a shotgun that was stored behind the trash compactor out there in that Florida room. And my mom said, well, that's not loaded. And I knew it because I had always, when we moved back home, I told Dad, I don't want that gun loaded in the house with my kids. So they had, that's the way that was. And I said, I know, but whoever it might be out there doesn't know. And I can get close enough to him to swat him with it, so.
That was my favorite part of the story, to be honest with you, that you really beat someone.
I was going to beat someone. And I am not a brave. I was not a brave person back then. Now I would in a heartbeat.
I think you're pretty brave at that moment, but you had your kids to deal with, to worry about, right?
I was in mother bear mode,
exactly.
And I was concerned about them. So I took that and I went out there, looked around. I went to the pump house, didn't see anything, wandered around in the back, went behind the pool area. And my dad had a ladder truck parked back there in the middle of the turnaround because he was also an electrical contractor on the side. And I found my dog, Penny, under that ladder truck. And I could hear her whimper. I tried to get her to come out. She would have nothing to do with me. And I'm like, fine, stay. So I went back towards the house and I was nervous, but I'm going to go in the garage because if there's anybody here, that's where they're hiding. So I went into the garage, flipped the light on. There was a set of twin mattress leaned up against the wall. I didn't see anybody in the garage. So I thought, okay, if there's someone in here, the only place they could be hiding is behind those mattresses. So as I'm creeping around like Elmer Fudd, about to go, spew a bunch of cuss words and stick my shotgun muzzle behind these mattresses, like Elmer Fudd, I suddenly feel like something's wrong. I start feeling like my body starts feeling like I'm on fire. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I got to get out of here right now. And I turned to run out that pedestrian door. And as soon as I hit the doorway, something hit in the chest, and like a bolt of lightning or something. I don't know. It hit me like right in the solar plexus area, I think is what you call that. And it's like spread down my arm, spread down my leg, spread up my arm, my head. And I felt like I was vibrating, and it was so intense and so minute. It almost felt like I could feel each individual molecule of my body vibrate individually. That's how weird and intense it was.
It was like this intense, bright light.
The light was so bright that I know my eyes were closed, but I could still see it. And it hurt. And I always say it felt to me like time stopped. Yeah. I don't know what time stopping feels like, but it just seemed like there's no way I could there's no way I could have endured that for long. Because
do you know, so you were inside the garage when this light hit you?
I was in the doorway.
Oh, so do you think the light came from outside the garage? Came from outside and hit you?
Yes.
Could you ever tell where it was coming from?
No, I didn't see it coming. It just hit me out of the blue. As soon as I got to the open doorway, like I'm standing in the door frame in the open doorway of the garage, and bam.
That's amazing.
I don't know where it came. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't see it coming. It just hit me like a bolt out of the blue. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm dying. It's okay.
You die. And before the light happened, when you were feeling weird in the garage, did you write that it was like heat? You were feeling like this intense heat on your skin?
I felt hot. Yeah, I felt like, more like a hot flash. I don't know men have hot flashes or not. Women will know what I'm talking about. I just felt this intense heat come from inside of me, like a hot flash over me. Okay. And I felt hot and tingly and weird. And I felt panicky all of a sudden. Like, I gotta get out of here. Yeah.
You gotta get out. And then the white light envelops you.
It was intense. Yes.
Wow. Right at the doorway of this garage.
Yeah. And like I said, I have no idea how long this little bit of this incident, how long this was. But the next thing I remember is the vibrating stops, the shaking and vibrating stop. The intensity of the light wanes, a lot. And I'm now a little bit outside the door on that cement patio. And I feel someone pull down on the back of my shoulder from behind. And I feel like someone's stabbing me in the head with a hot poker in my ear. and I can't scream or anything. And then I hear this disembodied voice. I don't see anybody, but I hear someone say, it was unfortunate that I had felt that pain. And then I started to notice movement out in front of me. At that point, I realized my eyes were messed up. And it was like when you get your picture taken with the old flash cubes, and if you didn't blink quick enough, you kind of blew your eyes out and everything had those white splotches all over them. Well, that's what that's what my vision was doing. And I could see movement out in front of me. And at that point, when I could finally focus a little bit in on them, I thought they were kids. And I remember thinking to myself, why are these kids in my mom and dad's backyard? Why are these kids in their backyard? They seemed to come from different directions in the yard. And then they lined up kind of out in front of me. I don't know. I'm bad with feet, but maybe 30, 40 feet up by the driveway. They kind of lined up. And then
kids in your yard at night, just random kids. Like, yeah.
And I'm thinking, what? This is crazy. None of this is making sense to me. And and then they all line up and then they kind of glide towards me. And I think they're moving weird. And it wasn't walking. It was more like a glide or a slide. And they were all lined up. I couldn't see a lot of detail about them, but I could see that they all seemed to be dressed alike. And that's when I saw this craft. And I always say, we called it a craft for lack of another way to describe it. But in retrospect, for years, I've thought, there's no way even 6 little kids could get in this thing and fly anywhere, because they would have been all crammed in there like sardines. It was shaped like an egg shape, and it really wasn't much bigger than the pump house. I estimated it be about 10 feet tall.
Can I jump in? Would you mind if I took the liberty of showing one of the clips where you actually talk about this?
Sure.
In the Observers? I've got the video here, and it's like ready to go.
Okay.
And I'm looking, description of craft, got it right here. And we're going to just be at the bottom of the screen, and we're going to play this. And I'm hoping, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I think this is going to work. Bottom here. This is from the Observers.
For all intents and purposes, we called it a craft, but I have no idea what this was, and it was not very big. And if these even 6 small people were in it, there's no way that they could fly from anywhere in the universe in that little thing. So I don't know what that was. And I also don't think it was completely on the ground, because it kind of had the appearance of a bobber on a smooth lake, that ever so slight little wobble. And it had like 4 skinny legs coming off of it, but they were so skinny, and they were attached in the middle of the body, not near the bottom. And it was more like they were to stabilize this thing rather than to support the weight of it. You know what I mean? So, and I didn't want to look at it. As soon as I saw it, I was like,
Cool. That was from the Observers. Thanks for letting me do that.
Yikes, I look like my mom.
We all look like our parents at some point. It always happens. I remember seeing some friends of my mother and father years ago. They knew me as a kid, and I was working at a grocery store. I think I was 20, 21, and they hadn't seen me in years. And they said, "Oh my God, Richie, you look like your mother and sound like your father," which was probably true. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty good clip of you, and you did you kind of got into the description of that craft with those tiny, skinny legs, almost as if like they're not really practical for supporting this thing. Yeah. But was it hovering or was it landed? What did you get a sense of that?
At first look, I thought it was on the ground, but after and I kept looking away. I'd look at it and I'd look away because it was freaking me out and I was scared. But it's one of those things, like I always say, I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to look at it, but I didn't want to not look at it because I needed to know where it was in in regards to where it was by right. Where if it starts moving toward me, I'm about to die. So, but
did you have a sense for how long you were able to see that craft?
I don't know. I can't say how long, the whole thing went. I still only remember maybe 10 minutes of that whole thing. But Bud, I think between talking to Mom and talking to Deanna and her husband, determined that there was maybe about an hour and 15 minutes when I was unaccounted for. But I still don't.
That's the thing. Like,
yeah,
you thought you were in there for what, 10, 15 minutes, maybe or less, but you actually were gone for much longer, according to your family.
And see, now I don't know whether when the vibrating stopped and I found myself out farther on the patio, was that the end of something that, and like from the being hit with the light and being like vibrating and frozen, and then it finally stopping and I'm farther out the doorway and on the patio. Was there like an hour in between there that I still didn't remember? I don't know. At that point, I didn't know. And it was just strange how it all, after I saw the thing in the yard and the kids, the kids moved down into it. I remember thinking, oh my God, my kids are in this house. And again, I hear that voice that says, your children are okay. And then a few moments more pass. I missed something. I noticed there was a ball of light about 25 feet out in front of me that was next to this thing, but not quite on it, I don't think. Yeah. And it was about the size of a basketball. It was very soft and it was easy to look at compared to that intense light that burned my eyeballs up. And it went down really slowly, and then it came back up and stopped. And I got the distinct impression that it was looking at me. I don't know why I felt that way, but I just felt that way.
It's like an orb of some sort.
Yeah. And then
and it was, did you say it was white? Did I get the color?
Yeah.
It was white.
White.
Yeah.
But a softer, not that intense like what hit me.
Right.
And and then I heard my name being called. And at that point, as soon as I heard my name, it was like someone snapped their fingers and I woke up. And I later found out that was my mom that had called my name. She had apparently stuck her head out the back door where she'd been and yelled my name. So as soon as I heard my name and I kind of snapped to, everything that I just described was just wiped out of my mind. I was just totally gone. I didn't remember the light or anything. And I remember walking up the back patio, up the little back steps to the upper porch where the kitchen was. And she says to me, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, everything's cool. But at this point, instead of
something had happened to you, you were definitely being manipulated mentally at that point, right? I mean, you were
not only me, but the people that I went to, my girlfriend and her husband,
right.
They didn't even register how long I'd been gone. And when Bud came,
the thing, like, you're coming back for this, like, this is a serious thing. Your mom's like, get back here now. You get back to the house. And so, like, you go out with an empty shotgun, you're ready to smack someone with this thing, and you're gone for an hour. Like, I would think she'd be freaking out if you were missing for, much less than that period of time. She's like, what happened to my daughter?
Right.
And so it seems like everyone was kind of just sedated a little bit.
My mom did not even remember why she called, what triggered her to call me to come back home until days later. And she's standing at the kitchen window, and apparently she was looking at the bird feeder, and it triggered her memory. And she turned around to me and said, I just now remembered why I called you to come home the other night. And I'm like, why? And she goes, well, I was standing here and I saw a light around the bird feeder. And she said it was about the size of a basketball and it was real, soft. She said, I thought at first it might be the beam headlights, somebody coming down that side drive, or a flashlight, somebody out with the flashlight that shined it on the bird feeder. She says, but I didn't see anything or anybody. And she goes, and then I was staring at it and it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then poof, it disappeared. And she said, as soon as it disappeared, I got it in my head that you needed to come home. I'm like, okay.
Oh, God. Wow. Yeah.
So, and then
but
later,
for a few days though, like everything had been kind of forgotten though, right? Like in the
right.
immediate aftermath.
in the immediate aftermath, everything was forgotten by everybody. Now that when my girlfriend actually ended up coming back to the house that night, her daughter and
Yeah.
and we went to the pool to swim, and all of us started getting sick, nauseous. And I started noticing like white halos around all the outdoor lights and stuff. And so for some reason, we thought maybe it'd be a good idea to go to White Castle. Deanna's like, maybe if we go get something to eat, we'll feel better.
It was the
Everything's always
80s.
better with White Castle. I know, right? So, but that got aborted, and they went home. And the next morning when I woke up, my eyes were swollen so bad. They were swollen shut, and I was in so much pain that my mom took me to the emergency room. And from the emergency room, I was taken to an ophthalmologist's office across the street. And the first question that he asked me was, have you looked into the arc of a welder's torch? And I'm like, no. And I'm thinking, why would I do that? Mind you, I did not tell him about the light because at that point, I still hadn't remembered it. That following week,
Unbelievable. Incredible.
yeah, the following weekend was 4th of July weekend. So all the family always came to mom and dad's house because they had a pool. So we'd go swimming and cook out and, light off, I said, copious amounts of Kmart fireworks and annoy all the neighbors. But it's the American thing to do, right? But anyway, the kids all ran out to the pool. And then my oldest nephew ran back inside and said, Grandma, what's wrong with your yard? And we didn't know what he was talking about. So all the adults dropped and went out there to see what was going on. And there was that mark. It was about an 8-foot diameter circle. It had a big kind of a pushed up part with a big crack on the side. And then it had like a 49-foot swath that came off the edge of it, almost like a pinwheel, but it was it ended in a perfect arc. And it was like exactly 2 feet wide, and all the grass in this little thing that just looked like it kind of laid down and turned this grayish brown. And so here we're all kind of standing around this mark in the yard, and my mother turns and looks at me and says, oh, that's where the UFO landed the other night. And I looked at my mom, and because I'd been having nightmares and feeling weird, but hadn't had anything consciously come out yet. And I looked at her and I thought, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you say something like that? And then boom, I looked back at that mark in the yard and everything started coming back. I remembered being hit by the light. I remembered the first thing I remembered, it was like 2 big black eyes just kind of superimposed in the air between my face and that mark. And then bam, it was as if somebody pulled the finger out of the dike and here it came. And I started to remember. And from that point on, I was a hot mess. I actually believe I had a nervous breakdown in that next couple weeks or so. And I'm thankful.
My God, it's understandable. I don't have such a memory in my life, but I can imagine if I were to think like, good Lord, I just was hit with this bright white light. I heard these voices in my head. Like, that's not something people get every day. That's very, very unusual.
No,
experience.
And when I met the psychologists or the psychiatrists at the hospital in New York after Bud started the investigation, and they did, 6 hours of verbal and written psychological testing to make sure, I told that doctor, it's okay if you tell me I'm crazy. I'm good with that. They make pills to fix that, and that's fine with me. That's exactly what I told them.
It's hilarious.
But I had such anxiety after that. I had anxiety before that, but it just was off the chain after
this
that.
Really messed you up physically for a while. I mean, you wrote about this, and,
yes,
and it also really affected your dog. Would you be able to talk about that?
My dog that was under the dad's ladder truck that night clearly had been out and exposed to something, and in retrospect, probably why she was too afraid to come out from under the truck. But she started to lose the hair off of her back. And we first thought it was mange because it kind of looked like that. And if you ever seen a mangy dog,
Sure.
But then the hair started coming off in places where she couldn't rub it off. And she started to develop black, oozy sores on her back. we noticed that her eyes were whited over, and she was behaving like she couldn't see well. And we'd start finding teeth in her dog bowl, and she was just so lethargic and clearly going downhill. So it was not immediately, but within a month or so, we took her to the vet, and they put her to sleep. They ended up putting her to sleep. And
so soon after.
I kind of, in my mind later, remembered Penny and what happened to her, and always in the back of my mind thought, is that going to happen to me someday because of that, night? I always had that anxiety in the back of my head. And in fact, I did end up, and at the age of, in my mid 30s, I was diagnosed with macular degeneration, and I had cataracts really bad. And by the time, and they kept putting off removing my lenses because I was so young, but my vision got so bad they had no choice. So I have nice acrylic lenses now, and I just need these little dollar store readers. But my macular degeneration is dry, and it is stable. I have to be dilated every 6 months, and then I had some weird other thing happen not too long ago that I'm beginning to wonder is not also somehow connected to that night. It may or may not be. I don't have any proof. I find it interesting though, and I'll ask my surgeon about it. But in January, I had emergency surgery for multiple partial bowel blockages, and when they got in there, the doctor said that from above my navel down, it was just one solid mass of scar tissue. It was like a giant web, and all of my intestines and everything were in it. And
that there's no, that should not have been the case.
No,
having surgery that would have caused that.
Not only that, but I ended up going back into the hospital. Let's see, that was in January, 3.5 months later, to have it done again. And there was even more webbing inside of me that they had to disconnect from my small intestines and my bladder. It was scar tissue adhesions, but the scar tissue was like netting. It was everywhere. I had over 40 partial bowel blockages, and the doctor said it was a miracle I didn't lose about 4 feet of my small intestines. I had scar tissue because I had 2 C-sections and a hysterectomy. All that was done before the June 30th, 1983 incident. But whatever. So I had the scar tissue already in there, and people get scar tissue adhesions and they do cause issues. But the doctor had never seen anything like it in his life. He said, I can't believe you walked in my office. He had to call another surgeon in the first time to assist him because there was so much that it was, he said, I released 1 and 5 more pop up. I've never seen anything like it.
Was this an issue when you knew Bud and when you were working with him, or is this is later?
This just happened in 2020.
Just more recently.
Yeah.
I wonder what, if there's a relationship to your experiences. Obviously, that's a question. And if it would be related to, prior reproductive, I don't know if it's connected to that or if it's just digestive or,
When I had my hysterectomy in 1992,
yeah,
the gynecologist who did the hysterectomy told me, and this was his exact words, your uterus was trashed. He said, my ovaries were the size of walnuts and completely wrapped in scar tissue and attached to my intestines, and my uterus had grown to my bladder. He had never seen anything like it. And that was in 1992.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Right.
I can't prove it,
Right.
but in my heart, in my gut, I can't help but wonder, did being exposed to whatever hit me have an effect on me? I don't know. And also they discovered back in, this has been 6 years ago, that I have a condition called fibromuscular dysplasia in my arteries. And interestingly enough, in that condition, your arteries grow webbing inside of them that attaches to the arterial wall, and then it pulls the artery closed and tries to kill you. They found mine because I had 7 aneurysms on one of my renal arteries. But when they did the balloon angioplasty on it and they opened up the balloons, the webbing popped and the artery opened right back up. No stents needed or anything. Yeah. And it's a rare condition. And I again, I go back to that night, and
Mhm.
but I must say, where it might appear that these contacts had some negative effects on my health, I honestly do not believe any of it was intentional or malicious. I think it was a side effect of whatever happened to me, if indeed it does have anything to do with it.
Well, I mean, if the voices that you were hearing were them, which it seems like it would be, they were obviously polite about it and they seem to have regret over it. But you actually did experience negative side effects for at least a year or maybe even more. I don't know, but you had some
Yes.
serious issues in the immediate
Mhm.
aftermath.
I did. I
Um,
had swollen glands that would come and go, low grade fevers that would come and go, rashes that came and went. My hair thinned out. My gums bled when I brushed my teeth.
like
I still,
radiation
I
poisoning.
still have the horizontal lines on my toenails, on my big toenails, is the only place that it's still left where they grow out with horizontal lines on them, not the up and down lines like most people have. Mine are across.
Wow. Wow. And this isn't your whole story because you had, well, first of all, we haven't even talked about how you got to work with Bud and how more got unpacked as a result of that. But you had
Mhm.
other experiences in the aftermath of this. Would you be able to share those? Like you had one
Um,
experience where you're with one of your friends and you're driving.
mhm.
And I don't remember all the details of this, but you had something happened.
That was prior to June 30, 83.
Oh,
I was actually
prior.
like, yes, I was 17 at the
So did
time.
this come out in hypnosis with Bud then? Is that how that happened?
Uh, I actually did remember seeing the light in the sky,
Mhm.
but under hypnosis, I actually is when I was able to remember a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, I remembered my girlfriend Dee and I used to go out driving around. We'd go roller skating on the weekends, and her boyfriend and her were always at the skating rink, but she didn't trust him. So we kind of stalked him, whenever he lived out in the country out far east
Boyfriend
of Indy.
snooping.
So, she drove and I just rode along, and she just wanted to make sure his car was home where he said he was. So she was kind of stalking him a little bit, but anyway, we're out in the country driving around, and we have another girl with us in the back seat who I did not know very well. She was more Dolores's friend than mine. And she says, I see this light flashing in the sky over the field. And I go, oh, look, there's a UFO. And I kind of giggled because I didn't really think it was a UFO at
Mhm.
first. And Dolores like, oh yeah, that's cool. And the girl behind in the back seat, she suddenly freaked out. And she got really scared and she goes, don't say that. That's not funny. I'm like, okay. And I kind of looked at Dolores and was kind of
Interesting.
giggling. Yeah. And then I saw the light again, and it was a lot closer and a lot bigger, and it was acting weird. And I'm like, oh, okay. And Dolores is seeing it too. And then the girl in the back seat's really flipping out.
Mhm.
And then the next thing I remember, we're driving home, and we are way past time to get home. We actually had to sneak in the back bedroom window to avoid seeing her parents, getting up and getting ready for work. So we didn't intend to be out that late. And I do remember Dolores said, "Time sure flies when you're having fun," in a sarcastic kind of way. And so I was telling this to Bud. This was probably in like November of 77, something like that.
Yeah.
And I I was telling Bud the story, and he goes, well, do you think it's possible that we might be able to talk to this girl? He did a little session on me, and I did remember the car being pulled over. I remember the whole car being enveloped in this black smoke, and I couldn't see her. I couldn't see Dolores. I couldn't see anything about the car. And then I felt as if I was pulled out of the car by my legs. And then the next thing I remember, I'm in this place on a table, and I'm having some medical procedure done, and I'm freaking out. So
Could you tell what kind of medical procedure this would have
it
been?
was
Get a sense
some
of
female procedure with the female's
female
organs.
reproduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and not in a sexual way in any way, shape, or form. Not at
No,
all.
right.
But, and so Bud says, do you think that Dolores, do you know how to still get a hold of her? Maybe she would talk to me about that night. And I'm like, well, yeah, we hadn't talked to each other for years, but my sister and her brother, they were all still friends. So I got her phone number and called her, and she's like, yeah, come on over. So I took Bud over to her house and we sat down and talked. And he said, so I'd like to ask you about the light that you and Debbie saw that night. And she goes, okay, do you mean the one in the sky or the one on the ground? And I looked at Bud, and Bud looked at me, and because I hadn't said anything about the light on the ground, because I didn't remember it being on the ground. She did.
Yeah.
So that was weird. And that was, when I was 17.
We're talking about a landed craft, I assume.
Yeah. 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 So, and Bud asked her, would you like, she didn't remember much either. And he said, would you like to have, some hypnosis and try to remember? She's like, no, I'm good. She's like, I have gotten along just fine without for a while now. And if I needed to remember it, I would. So no, thanks. She definitely had a vibe that it was something that she probably didn't want to remember. But
I think that's pretty common, to be honest. I think, people like you're the unusual one, to be honest. I think a lot of folks, they have something traumatic like this. And I'm just thinking about some of the folks that I've talked to. I think a lot of people do not want those memories recovered.
And you know what? I'm going to tell, like I told the producer, for every one person out there like me who's willing to talk about one experience they had, there's probably 50,000 people out there that have had crazier stuff happen to them than I have, and they ain't saying a word. And I don't blame them. Although times have changed and the stigma is not nearly as bad as it used to be 38 years ago. It's still there, though.
It was awful, decades and decades. It was absolutely terrible. I mean, I can only imagine how difficult it had to be for you, as one of the most prominent abductees out there. I mean, you're subject of a book by Bud Hopkins, for God's sake. So that had to be very difficult. But yes, it is. It's better now. It's a little bit better now. Right.
I met Bud because I had to pick a book up called Missing Time that he'd written long before he met me. And I picked it up in the library with other books. And I wasn't really sure about what it was about until I started reading it. And then when I started reading it, I started having panic attacks. And I'm like, I can't read this.
Oh, boy.
And my mom says, you got to take that book back to the library. We can't keep going to the emergency room because I think I was having a heart attack.
Wow.
So, but that book came back in my mind after I saw the mark in the yard, because I knew there was a place in the back where you could write to the sky. And I was such a wreck. I was not sleeping at night. I was physically ill. And this just wasn't going to work. Thank God for my parents. And so I went to the library, got that book, and I wrote Bud a 14-page letter and took like a dozen Polaroid pictures of the backyard. And now my older sister had an experience in 1965. It's the only one she ever talked about. And, I was raised in a house where weird things happened. So I assumed that was normal for the longest time. And I actually wrote about her experience to Bud first, kind of threw her under the bus, because it sounded to me like she had been abducted. But what did I know? And then I said, oh, by the way, this happened a few weeks ago, and on all these pictures. And then I gave the letter to my mom, and my mom told Bud later that she had no intention of mailing that letter, and she had carried it around in her purse for a couple of weeks. And then she found herself at the mailbox one day mailing bills, and she said something kept telling her, you need to mail Debbie's letter. It's in your purse. Put it in the mailbox. And so she finally relented and mailed it. And then I was out with friends one night, and I came home, and my mom was laying on the couch when I came in, and she said, hey, that guy that wrote that book called. And I'm like, what? Oh my God.
Wow.
My heart started pounding. And I thought,
Sure.
oh my God, she said, his phone number's over there by the phone. You can call him back. And I thought, do I want to do this? Do I want to open this, box? And so I went over, and I was literally physically shaking when I dialed his number.
Mm-hmm.
And then he answered the phone, and that was it. 3 years later, I went to New York a couple of times, sold my washer and dryer that was in storage to pay for my bus ticket because I had no money. And, then he came to our house several times, and that's how I got.
And he preserved your anonymity for a while. I mean, you went as Kathy Davis in the book.
Yes.
And Copley Woods. I mean, you were in Indianapolis, I think, right?
Yes. And Copley Woods is a pseudonym as well for the area that I lived in. All the people in my book all the people in Intruders names or pseudonyms.
I mean,
And
I
that
think
was
at
to
the time,
protect our
especially,
family.
that was the right thing to do at the time.
Well, I
I would
needed to
say.
protect my children and my family. We had already
Exactly.
had weird people showing up in the backyard. Long before the book was ever written, we had people coming, driving in our backyard and taking pictures of the mark in the yard. We got a phone call from the neighbors one time. They knew that we had been gone that day, and she called my mother and said, there was a man in your yard in a suit with a big briefcase back there where that place is, and I thought you should know. And that was
Knowing
before
who
the
this
book.
was?
No, nobody knew who we were, and nobody knew who that man was. And that was before the book. So there was no way we were going to let anybody write anything about us. Well, but he had to kind of do a little bit of convincing just to get the family to agree to write the book. It wasn't just me. It's my whole family.
Right.
And I was the one who got volunteered to take one for the team to talk about
Yeah,
it.
because your mom had at least some kind of encounters when she was a girl, I believe.
Yeah, she did. I know of one. My mother was adopted at the age of 2 from a place in an orphanage in Louisville by a master sergeant in the Army. And then she was taken to China for 2 years, and then Rhode Island, and then back to Kentucky, where she eventually met my dad. But when it was in Kentucky, she was chased through the woods by a little boy. And for some reason, she felt somehow that was connected to this whole thing, because she felt compelled to tell Bud when he asked her about weird stuff. So
She said it was a boy, but she was implying that it wasn't really a boy, I suppose.
I think
Is that right?
I think that was what she had in the back of her mind. Yes, because I don't know why she would have said it to Bud for any
No,
other
right.
reason. So,
And I'm trying to guess your mom's age. Would she have been this 1940s? I'm thinking.
my mom was born. When was she born? In 1931 or something like that.
Okay, so earlier. So in the 1930s, this would have been.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm guessing if she's born
I'm
in the
guessing
early
too.
30s.
My mom passed away in 2000. Okay, my mom passed away in 2000, and in 2001, and she just made her 71st birthday when she passed away.
So
So
1930,
yeah,
or around 1930 or so.
that's when she was born. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
So this would have
okay.
probably been in the mid to late 30s
Yeah,
when that happened.
interesting. But you never got like a lot of detail on it. But Bud must have gotten some detail. Did he think that she was an abductee?
Yeah,
I had the idea that he did.
I think he did. Yes, I
Yeah.
think he did. And of course, we don't know much about her actual family, so we can't go back farther than that on that side
Interesting.
anyway.
Yeah.
So,
And also your sister
Mhm.
had an experience.
Mhm.
And what about any of your kids or any other family members?
Well, my youngest son,
Yeah.
Bud. I know that Bud. There's in Intruders, I think there's a picture that my oldest son drew for him, but my oldest son woke us up screaming bloody murder one night, and when we went in there, he was stiff as a board and he couldn't move, and he was crying and screaming, and he said that the little man with the big head had come out of the closet and wanted to take his brother, and his brother was in the twin bed next to him, younger brother by 14 or 15 months. He was probably 3 or 4, and he was out, still absolutely asleep, even though his brother's over here screaming bloody murder, and covered in blood all over his bed, all over his pillow, up the side of the wall, halfway to the window.
Whose blood?
From
Why?
his nose. It was coming out of his nose. So we took him to the emergency room, and they ended up having to cauterize him. But the thing that struck my mom and disturbed her, and why she snatched him up and like, we're going to the hospital right now, is because there's the older one screaming at the top of his lungs, and the younger one's not even waking up. And it was like, what the hell? So
That's surreal.
yeah.
That's surreal. That's
Now,
crazy.
the boys are in their 40s now, and neither one of them likes to talk about this or will talk about it. It's just still disturbs them. And I have a granddaughter who is 15 when, and she's like my little mini me. And when she was 4 or 5 years old, maybe somewhere in that age, she started having night terrors. It lasted about 6 months. And my son called me absolutely furious at me and said, "What have you said around her? What if you talk?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because we had a rule. We don't talk about this around the little ones. But A, I don't want to scare them. And B,
Right.
don't want to contaminate their memory for the future in case there's something that they need to remember, but mostly we just don't want to scare them. And I said, "We haven't talked about anything around her." He goes, "Well, she's seen something on TV or something." And I said, "What is wrong?" And he said, "She's saying that the little man with the big head is coming through her window and trying to take her." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "You heard me." And I'm thinking, "Oh shit." My son, God love him, he bought cans of air freshener and he remade labels that had big-headed people on them with the big red slash in them. And he said that this was like repellent. And he got her a radio and a nightlight and he blocked her window out.
Oh, wow.
And she was not allowed to come to my house and stay with me for 3 months. And it broke my heart because she was with me like every weekend. But I understood. And it finally stopped. Now, fast forward to, she was about 14. She's at my house. We're chilling, watching TV, and a commercial for Ancient Aliens comes on. And I started to instinctively reach over and change. And I'm like, that kid's 14. She's probably heard more than me at this point.
Yeah.
And after the commercial was over, she turned around and looked at me and she said, "Nini?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Do you believe in aliens?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And that's all I said. Deadpan, straight face, didn't say another word. And she said, "Good, so do I."
Okay.
And I thought, okay. And that's exactly what I thought. Okay. And then I
Like,
thought
"All
in
right,
my
we'll have
head,
a longer conversation one day."
now she knows
Right.
that if there's something she wants to talk about, grandma is safe to talk to about.
Absolutely.
But it kind of freaked me out. But this child is like my little mini me. So it doesn't surprise me. And I hope it's not.
I remember you were
hope I'm
talking
wrong.
about her when we were together last July. Your mini
She
me
is
was very
she is
adorable.
the apple of my eye.
Yeah.
I always tell her I waited 27 years for you because I had, I had my boys, and then I wanted
Parents are like, "Screw the kids, I'm waiting for the grandkids."
I'm a much better grandma than I was a mother, just because I have so much more patience now.
I think that's often the case, actually.
Yeah.
I have a feeling. Hey, I got a question that was relayed to me, and I feel like I'm jumping the gun here. Do you have an idea of when these abductions, is this an ongoing thing for you, or did this go on for a long time? Do you have an idea? This is a question from Eve. When does Debra think she was last abducted, and does she expect to be again? Do you expect to be abducted again? And when were you last abducted, to your memory?
The time that stands out the most to me is I think it was I'm pretty sure it was like a week after I had my hysterectomy. We lived out on the farm with my late husband, and my roommate and friend Jean Robinson, who's also had experiences, was staying with us, her and her daughter. And I was laying on the couch and the door was open, and I saw a flashing light outside in the sky. And we lived out in the country at that time. We were out on a farm. And I said, "Hey, you guys, look at that light out there." So we all got up, and I had a robe on and house coat. So I'm pretty sure I had already had the surgery, but it might have been.
We're in the 1990s, I'm guessing then.
We're in the early 1990s, like 92.
Yeah, right.
And we go outside, and my late husband is a ham radio operator, and he had a camcorder, and our cows were going berserk in the barn, and he could hear a beeping sound over there. And so he's trying to record this beeping sound, and he's on the two-way, the shortwave radio, trying to talk to some guy up north who thinks he sees the northern lights, which we can't see the northern lights where we are in Indiana. But I mean, we maybe could rare, but all of a sudden, and the recording, I don't have the recording anymore. It was unfortunately one of many things that was lost during the tornado, and I lost almost everything. But in the recording that KO had made, you could hear Jean's daughter say, "Mama, what's that walking down the road towards us?" And I remember standing at the end of the driveway looking down this dark country road, and I thought it was a deer coming straight at me, so it was narrow and it had a big head and it was walking down the side of the road. But I thought, that deer's walking kind of weird. And then I remember thinking that, and right after I thought that, you can hear Jean's daughter scream. And then the videotape, the timer, that timer on the videotape jumps 18 minutes.
Okay.
And it's like, and the next thing I remember is we're back in the driveway. I don't know what's happened to this deer. It's gone.
So the VCR jumped 18 minutes ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So was it recording something at the time?
He was recording on it. He was trying to record the beeping sound out in the barn.
Oh, I see. So, and it was like missing 18 minutes.
Yeah, it actually literally the timing thing on it jumped from 18 minutes. So there's literally 18 minutes. The timer. It is bizarre. And my late husband said he was an electrical engineer who was like a genius. And he said, there's no way that could even happen. That's not possible. So, and so that was the last time. And I'm pretty sure it was right after I had my hysterectomy. That's the last time I feel like I had some kind of major.
They might have lost interest in you after that, to be quite honest, right?
Have you wondered?
I mean, if it's all about reproduction or hybridization or anything like that, I mean,
that's been hypothesized by many people. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wonder, frankly, but this is what I'm curious about. And I saw one of the questions scrolling up here that was kind of along those lines. Do you have any, like, for example, when Bud was, I think you also met with Aphrodite Clamar at least once, mm-hmm. and she was actually the hypnotherapist at Bud Hopkins. She was the one that Bud originally worked with because he didn't do hypnotherapy, and I'm assuming she taught him. But you worked with her and with Bud. And my question is, A, did they, either of them, pull out any like clear or apparently clear memories of an alien encounter? And B, this is one of the questions that I just saw. Do you have any conscious recollection of any of these encounters of these beings? I mean, you described one in the yard where you saw like the
mm-hmm.
the 6 kids in the yard, but I'm actually interested if what Bud might have pulled out in hypnosis of you, and if you had any other conscious recollections as well.
Well, I do have a very vivid conscious recollection. It was right after I was married. I was married. I turned 18 in February and was married in April of that following year. So I was quite young, but
in the late 70s.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And I was, my husband and I lived in an attic apartment, and we were in bed one night. It was hot as hell, and we fell asleep, and I was awakened by these 2 guys in our room, but they were not human. They had big heads and big black eyes, and they were skinny, and they had dark outfits on, like black. People tease me a turtleneck. I don't know what they call it, but his neck was black, and then everything was black. The clothes, the gloves, feet, everything. And they glided toward, I remember sitting up in bed, and this wasn't a dream.
And they glided. You said they glided.
They glided. They slid towards me. Yes, they glided. They did not step. And one of them was holding a black box, and about not much bigger than a shoebox, and it had like a a red light, either in it or coming out from inside of it. And there was a hole there or something, but there was a red light on top. And when I first saw them, and I jumped up out of bed, I jumped up to sit up in bed, and I was panic stricken and terrified. And then that just kind of washed away. And I wasn't scared, because when I first saw them, I remember my first thought was, oh my God, don't touch me. Don't come any closer, please. Don't kill me, and then whoosh, that was all gone.
Yeah.
And then I was calm, and this box, they kind of floated over to me and set it down in my lap. And I said, what is this? Can I have it? And
Seriously?
I did. I said, what is this?
Did
Can
you
I
get
have it?
of it?
And he said, no, you can't have it. And I say I
Now,
don't
did
know
he
whether it was
say
he
it?
or
Did he
she.
speak it, or was this a mind-to-mind
Well,
thing?
I think it was mind to mind. I don't remember seeing anybody talk to me, but he
And
said,
this
no,
is
you
something
can't.
that you remembered after the fact?
I remembered it the next day when I woke up. I was telling my husband about this nighttime thing that I saw. And I said, I kept trying to wake you up and you wouldn't wake up. And he goes, what the hell did you eat for dinner?
Did they
And
look like did they look like gray aliens, or did they look different?
yes,
They were like
no,
big head,
the
big
big
black eyes?
heads with the big black eyes, like shimmery, liquidy eyes that like, as soon as you look at them, you're like mesmerized,
And you
And
had this encounter and you remembered it the next morning. You talked to
I
your husband
did.
about it the next morning.
And I called my mom. My mom told Bud. She remembered when I called her and told her, because they all thought I had some crazy dream. I'm like, I insisted that it wasn't a dream. And everybody said it was a dream. It was a dream. I'm like, no, it wasn't a dream. So eventually they talked me into, okay, fine, it was a dream, but it was not a dream.
Gotcha.
And he said to me, no, you can't have it. But when you see it again, you'll know what it is and you know how to use it.
Oh, the
And then
box.
and then he took it away, and then they kind of slid back away from me, and then they just kind of
You'll
disappeared.
know how to use it. That's interesting. So, like, do you ever think that you did use it in some other subsequent encounter?
I don't not no, but Whitley Strieber made a good point, and I thought about it afterwards when he and I talked about this. I had a near-death experience not too long after that. During my pregnancy with my first son, I went into eclampsia and I died on the delivery room table. I had to be resuscitated twice. And during this time when I was dead, I didn't have your typical white light and tunnel and Jesus and all my loved ones around me. I felt that I disconnected from my body, but my body was now this black box that I was trapped in. And I was pounding on this box, trying to scream at the people that I could hear.
You were
I'm not
inside the
dead yet.
box in this vision?
I was inside the box in this near-death experience that I had. The box was my body. And then I disconnected from it. I felt a whoomp sensation as I disconnected.
Mhm.
And at first, this was an emergency C-section because my kidneys had failed and I was starting to go into a coma. I had eclampsia. My blood pressure was out of control. My heart was failing. And I remember I think I had an issue where, they give you anesthetic and they give you stuff to paralyze you. Okay. Well, I think they didn't give me enough anesthetic to completely knock me out because of the condition I was in and that I was pregnant, but I was paralyzed. So I felt them. Okay. So I felt them cut me open. And it wasn't like a slice. It was a pinch and a pull, like a burning, tearing pinch, and then a pull, and then a pinch and a pull. And that's how they were cutting me open. And I was desperately trying to tell these people, I can feel this, but I could not move. I was paralyzed. And then I could hear their voices, and they were talking about sailboats at Geist Reservoir. Somebody was talking about sailboats in that operating room for something. And then all of a sudden, I think I managed to shake my legs, and I felt a strap go down around my legs. And I started hearing a lot of yelling and clanking and things going on. And then their voices started to go farther and farther and farther away until suddenly it felt like they were in another room. That's how far away they sounded. And
Wow.
at some point, I disconnected. And I did not hear them anymore. I didn't hear anything anymore. But I could scream. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, I'm not dead yet. Let me out. And I could feel my fist punching on this black wall. And I felt like I was in this tiny little black box and I was desperately trying to get out. Then I heard a voice. I heard a voice, but I don't think it was anything, I think what I heard was a nurse whisper in my ear, you can't go yet. Your baby needs his mom. You have a new baby. You got to stay. And as soon as I heard baby, because while I was trying to get out, I forgot about the baby. I forgot about everybody that I loved. All I knew was I was alive and I needed to get the hell out of here because I was trapped in this box. Well, I was trapped there because it wasn't time for me to go. And Whitley made the comment, what if the black box that those men showed you was the box that you were in? when you tried to leave, somebody caught you in a box and made you stay, you know, until your body could take you
Like a
back.
soul container, which is one of these
Yes.
things that Linda, you mentioned her earlier. She's talked a lot about soul containers in her books, Glimpses of Other Realities.
Because it wasn't time for me to leave yet. I still had stuff to do.
Well, this is amazing because, I mean, first of all, you're in the Alien Abductee Club and you're in the Near Death Experience Club. So you're in both of those.
Mhm.
And that's just as big a club or a bigger club than the Alien Abductee Club. I mean, there's just a lot of people talk about that. And I'm guessing you probably know a lot of other people who've had NDEs because, like, you all want to share stories, right?
Yes.
But what's interesting too, and I remember talking to Whitley and his late wife, Anne. Anne was really into this a lot, is the connection between the alien experience and the near-death experience. This was, I would almost say this was like her obsession. She was so into it, and Whitley's deeply, deeply into it. And there is some kind of, I mean, I think there's got to be some kind of connection. Like,
I
so
think
many
so
people have
too.
had NDEs. Yeah, you do.
And I believe,
Yeah.
you know, that that's what turned me in. That's when I started getting interested with paranormal stuff back in the early 2000s. I started recording those EVPs. Now, I don't know if they're ghosts or spirits.
Right.
I tend to feel like there's a lot of life going on all around us that we are only privy to a tiny sliver of, but it's there everywhere. It's just like
You
our
know what?
brains.
I believe every family in the world has some kind of ghost story. I think everyone does. Like, when you ask around, even if they don't believe in that stuff, they're like, oh, well, yeah, my grandfather or whatever.
Mhm.
They'll bring out something. I've got several in my family.
Yep.
And, you know, both of my parents are now gone, and each of them bequeathed their own story, basically, like when they died, to the rest of us. Like, it's just freaky. I've talked about it before. I have no problem talking about it, and I don't know how to explain it. But
I don't either, but I know it's connected to, at least I can only speak for myself, and I can only speak for my life and my experiences. But in my instance, I believe that it's all connected. And also, I had a out of body experience when I was like 6. So, and it scared me because I thought I was not going to be able to get back. But
they somehow tie
sometimes
together.
it is all tied together for me
But
anyway.
I'd like to
Somehow.
know how the alien part of it ties in, because that's the part that always seems a little, different to me, because they're physical, but they're not physical. They're here, then they're not here, and it's difficult like, I'm sure you think about this as much as I do. I wonder, what the hell are they? Are they men and women from another planet coming in metal spaceships, or are they coming into our reality, right, and then
I think
leaving our
that's
reality
more.
someday?
When I
Yeah,
said
right.
that craft in the backyard was too small to fly anywhere in the galaxy with 6 kids in it, I believe that it was used as a stepping out or a point, you know. I
Like
started having,
like a portal type of a thing?
yeah, I started having visions for about a year after the June 30, 1983 incident, and I swear, I think that something got rewired in my brain, and I got a couple extra circuits, and then or maybe I was that way before, and this just enhanced it, but something changed, and I feel like that one of the drawings I did, I called Casey's Bubbles, and it was a series of bubbles that were touching and connected, but the bubbles are universes.
Mhm.
And where those little soap bubbles touch and that membrane is thin and becomes like one for a
Yeah.
moment, but it's fleeting and it moves. Somebody was trying to show me that's how universes work.
When did you draw that,
It
if I
was
may ask?
after the June, I think it was in 1985, after the
Okay,
June
so
30th,
here's what's
19.
cool about that. Like, that's actually common cosmological theory now,
Not wasn't then.
not in the 80s, not in the 80s. I mean, you hear someone like Michio Kaku, he'll talk about that exact idea. Like, you got these universes, and in between is the hyperspace, and that's what, I mean. But the idea of these universes like spawning off of each other, this is, I mean, I don't know if every astrophysicist believes it, but I know a lot of them do. That's a very widespread idea.
But see, this was back in 1985 when I drew
Yeah,
this and had
that's
these
kind of crazy.
images. And
Yeah.
then they were trying to tell me that like our brains are not wired to perceive everything around us. And that I think what I had
Wait, that's what
contact
you
with,
were told somehow, or
yeah,
you?
I think what I'm been having contact with isn't an extraterrestrial per se, like it didn't
Mhm.
fly here from some other planet. It came here from some other existence.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think they're there and they are aware of us. And I think there are people here that are aware of them. Somebody, and I think they are working
Mm.
on trying to communicate and transfer. But people like me, and there's hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people like me that have that extra, got that switch flipped on, and we're more aware of it. And
Yeah.
in my mind, it's like I visualize myself in this. I'm in this room right here, okay, and there are Wi-Fi signals, television signals, radio signals, all kinds of stuff flying around and through me right now, but my brain isn't wired to receive it, so I can't perceive it. My TV
Right.
can pick up the
Exactly.
TV signal. See,
Right.
these entities and these life forms, I think there's a lot of them. But what I'm having contact with, I think, is more, or at least now, is more that. Now there was definitely some physical stuff going on, but maybe it was they came here on a physical level and did some stuff to me to facilitate this later transformation that I
Okay, that's
had.
what I was gonna ask you. Like, what do you
Mhm.
think like that initial those earlier experiences that we talked about, the time
Mhm.
you were in your car with your friend D or
Mhm.
Dolores, and the time that you were in the in the garage. What do you think those were about? Like, what was the purpose of those, as far as you can tell, looking back on it?
I don't know. As far as I can tell, Bud thought it was Bud thought it was all reproductive stuff,
It sounds
and
like you don't
hybrid stuff.
necessarily agree with that.
I I never have fully. It's not that I don't. It's that I think there's way more to it than just that, and I think it
Yeah.
has something to do with me
Mhm.
and future generations of humans, n- you know,
What do you mean?
on this planet. Just I think that the kids born today are going to be different than the kids that were born in 1959 when I was born. They're going to be wired a little different, and they're going to be more receptive, and they're going to be more capable of. I think human beings are magnificent and powerful creatures, but I don't think we realize it or remember some things that are already in us. One of the things I used to write down when I'd get these dreams or visions was that somebody told me that the answers are in our blood. I told Bud this back in 1986.
Someone
It
told
it
you? Who told?
some
Like,
I don't know. It
oh,
came into my head during one of
okay.
these times.
The answers
The
in our
answers
blood.
that you seek are in your blood.
Uh,
Okay. And this was back in the 80s. And so I think that it's going to have something to do with the new kids coming in, grown, humans. I wondered, I know it sounds crazy and I'm all over the place, but I often wondered, there was one particular gray person or creature that I felt like I knew. And I made a comment to Bud one time, I wonder if it's possible if this thing that this person, this gray being is actually like my great 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 grandson from the future that came back here. I know it sounds a
right.
little
Right.
weird, but so my mind is like open to all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah.
I occasionally will I had something today. I went for a walk today in the sun and got some little sun and fresh air before the weather got crappy. And
Yeah.
this thought came in my head today that said, you look like an orb where I'm from. And I said, and so I had this conversation in my head and I said, what do you mean? That you are a bright little light bobbing around in the darkness and I can see you. And I'm like, is that like the orbs that people photograph? Is that you? I'm seeing you from the other side. Do you look like me over there? And they're like, yeah, we look like you over here. But to us, you look like a little ball of light bobbing around in the dark. And I said, so
I
then
just
you're
came
the
in.
little, yeah, this was just
Right.
today.
That's
So
pretty cool.
I'm
Hey,
losing my
can I show
mind.
one other clip of you? I had a whole bunch of clips I was going to show, and I obviously blew through that.
I'm
But there's
sorry.
one. There's one I would like to play.
Uh-huh.
Um, By the way, I got the, these are not final clips, and they put the wrong, on some of them, the lower third, the name is correct, it has your name. On a few of them, I think this is one of them, they have the name William Henry
Poor William.
below. You are not William Henry. William Henry is a great guy. I like
He
him
is a
very
good-
much. He's
I do
very
too.
interesting. I love talking to him. But anyway, they screwed up. They got William Henry's name. But I'd like to show this clip because this is, it's you talking about how you believe these experiences transformed you. And if you don't mind, I would like to share it. Let me just pull it up here. And this is it. Here we go. The observers.
Something about either before I was born, in the womb, or during an early contact changed something in me where I was able to perceive. And it has expanded as I have aged. And now not only do I perceive them, but I perceive other life around me. And I perceive things about people when I look at them. I can see somebody who's had the experience I've had. I just want people who've had these experiences, don't be afraid to speak up and speak out, because the government knows more than they're saying, and they don't want you to know. Because if you did, they wouldn't be able to control you, and you would not be afraid.
I thought that was really touching, and I'd never heard anyone describe it quite that way. I mean, you're saying in the womb. So do you think that you were tweaked throughout your life in this manner, or you're just wondering?
I'm just wondering. Yeah, I'm just musing. I don't know. I don't know for sure. And I could be wrong about a lot of stuff, but
well, I mean, what you're saying though is not unusual. I mean, you have to know, like, I'm sure you know a lot of other abductees. I know the Wiener brothers over the Allagash case from 1976, and they're great guys.
They are
Jack
great
and Jim.
guys.
Absolutely. And I remember talking with, because one of them unfortunately is a bit ill. I think I was talking with Jim, but he was saying, like, after their experience in 1976, like, their abilities and certain, like Jim he did a pottery, I think. And he said, yeah, I was like an okay potter before, but he really became like very, very, very good after that. And I think Jack, was the one who became like extremely good at mathematics, where like prior to that, he had like he was not great at math. He was okay at it. And I'm thinking even one of the other ones, Chuck Fultz, who's one, I think he, if I am not mistaken, but I could be wrong, I think he also had some after effect. But there's just one example. I've heard this many times, and I think like you hear this with a lot of people who've had these types of encounters, like something happens to them and some part of them gets switched on. So it seems like that's what you think happened with you.
I feel
would
like,
that be
yeah.
accurate? You don't?
Yes, that would be accurate. I do feel that way. And I feel like I said, as I get older, it gets better. And the more I trust in my instinct, I mean, that's for everybody should trust your first instinct, but the more I trust it, the better it gets. And when I said that, the governments want you to be afraid because they can control you when you're afraid. I don't disagree that having stuff flying around out there that you don't know about is not a security risk. I agree that it is, and I agree that could be dangerous, but I also realize that our planes fly into each other all the time. I mean, planes crash together in the sky. That's dangerous too. My personal feeling is whatever it is that's flying the stuff around wherever they're from, if they wanted to hurt us, that would have happened a long time ago, because they're more than capable of wiping us all out at the blink of an eye. So, the fear, I see a lot of people that are afraid, and fear is good. That's what protects you and keeps you alive. But I don't think that it would be to know that there's other life out there that's trying to contact us. I don't think that's
Right.
something I'm being afraid of. I'm excited because it's more life, and I think
Well,
all life is connected.
I mean, I get a definite impression like you do not have a negative impression of the experiences that you had. I'm thinking of the UFO ones explicitly, not the
Mhm.
more psychic or paranormal ones that you've more recently had. But
Yeah.
even those UFO alien encounters, I don't get the feeling that you think of them as highly negative. Um,
I feel like they're mostly neutral, like whatever
Neutral.
negative things
They're
happen,
doing something. They're
that
doing
something's
something to
going
you.
on, but I don't think there's anything malevolent.
I mean, do you
And that's just my own. I can only speak for
right.
myself.
You don't have an opinion on whether or not they were messing with your reproductive system. It sounds like
Well,
you go back and forth on this, or what do you think?
no, I think some things were done to me, and I do have that memory of what I called it the dream of seeing that girl that I've always hung on to, because I was pregnant before I had my first son,
Oh,
and then
yes,
that pregnancy disappeared.
that's right.
Um, so
I'm
I
glad you
mean,
mentioned that because I was aware of that and we forgot to discuss it.
but so yeah, I do believe there's something to that, but I don't think the thing that where I differed with Bud and Dave Jacobs, especially, is that I don't feel it was a bad thing or a terribly negative thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was, I don't know how to say this and not sound completely out of my mind. um,
Too late. You're already an alien abductee.
well, that's true. So who gives a crap anymore? But um, I still feel like I'm going to see that child again someday, and I don't think that um, whatever happened to me. I don't know. I just don't feel that bad, negative about it like a lot of people do. I don't. I feel bad, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, as a non-abductee, as far as I can tell, I don't think I've had any such experience. But I guess I would say I have mixed feelings about it at best because I do have some suspicions of at least one group that I think is here, and but I don't know. I mean, I haven't dealt with them explicitly. What do I know? It just
Well,
seems
and I
like
could be wrong. I could just be
yeah,
being naive and being duped, because I do
there's
try to give the benefit of the doubt to
there's
even
a
people.
clandestine element to it. They did injure you. I think your dog died as a result of this. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not something that I want to forget. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. There's some kind of now. It didn't seem like they were trying to from the messages that you were getting from them.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I think about it, but it doesn't matter what I think.
Well, you know
I'm
what?
just
I
one
go back
person.
and forth. I mean, I feel I have to live every day with it. So I have to make it so that I can live with it every day. And so, if I let myself start
Yeah,
to dwell
understood.
on it and feel too bad and negative about it, it's going to impact my life, because it's something I can't change. It is what it is. And so
Exactly. Yeah.
I can either choose to, feel angry and dwell on it and let it consume me, and let it take away whatever life I have left, or I can learn to let some of it go, because I don't have any control over that part, and just try to find the best place I can in myself, and so I can have a good experience while I'm still here.
Absolutely. No, totally respect that. I'm thinking I've taken up 90 minutes of your life here, and I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say. I do not want to cut you off, but I'm feeling like we're getting to a good point where we may want to break this off when you
Mhm.
feel it's right. Is there anything else that you did not say that you feel is important that you want to communicate?
No, not,
No,
no,
we did it
just,
all.
I think we got a lot of it in there. So,
I would like to say that people should check out your website. I'm actually a fan of your website, and you did a really it's just called debshome.com.
yeah.
Uh, and you've got a bit of your story, which you talk about, like the about me section, which is quite detailed. Actually, you have a lot in there, and the photos. Do you have the photo of the yard? Because I've seen that. In fact, Tracy showed me. My wife
Hmm.
said, "Here's a photo of the yard," and I wish I
Yep.
had been able to show that during the program, but is that on your site?
It is, and
Yeah.
even the picture of it, like that following year when the snow would melt off of it. That there's pictures of that too.
Okay, yeah. Because of course that's another thing in a number of UFO landing cases. There are these after effects. Did you know a guy named Ted Phillips by any chance? Did that?
I've met him before. I don't, it's been a long time ago, and I don't recall much about
He's
him.
no longer with us, unfortunately. But Ted was, at least while he was doing this in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and beyond, actually. It's a shame, really, because I don't know what's happened to his research, but he did massive numbers of ground trace cases of the UFO phenomenon. So if any time a UFO landed, he would try to get on top of it and study it. And there have been studies of these things. And it occurs to me like your case is important on that basis as well.
I still have some samples too. My parents have long since passed away, and but before we sold the house, actually,
were they studied in any detailed manner? Were there any conclusions from that?
Bud took one of the samples, and he had it studied. I don't know who did it. Some lab. He took it to some lab in New York or up in that area somewhere, and they said there wasn't any microbiological life or something in it. There wasn't any life in the soil. It repelled water. Water rolled off of it. It wouldn't absorb water, and
that's not the only time that happens. That's happened before.
Had to bake it at ridiculous amount of time and temperature to even get it to be remotely like that. I took a chunk of it, put it in a glass of water, and 24 hours later, you'd think I'd have mud, but I had a chunk of rock, like a chunk of dirt. And so I chunked out a bunch of chunks of it, and I had to put them in Ziploc baggies, and they've been in my cedar chest for 38 years. And that's one of the things that did survive the tornado, because the cedar chest got banged up, but the stuff in it survived. And so I still have some chunks of it. I don't know what you could get out of it after 38 years, but if somebody wants to study it, I'd be glad to let them have a piece of it.
I'm glad we mentioned it. Well, Deb Jordan-Kauble, I just want to thank you for being here. It was actually a real joy to talk to you. You're one of the cool people in the field. I mean, you're just someone that's easy to talk to, my opinion, and you had a really extraordinary experience. And I guess it's just hard to make sense out of these, to process this after all these years. But I think you've just done a great job at it. And I think I said fearless about you in the beginning of this program. I think that's right. I think you are fearless.
Well, sometimes I don't feel that way, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I mean it. So, well, thank you then. And I want to thank everyone here for being here with us. I've seen the chat family going kind of crazy on the side there. Thank you for everyone. I want to thank Pursuing X for being here. I know Tracy's milling about in the chat room as well. And I'm Richard Dolan, and I want to thank everyone for being here. I will be back again. And by the way, do check out the Observers. I've got links below. Links to Deb's website is below. Deb's book, Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders, is also available. I have a link to that. Do check all of that out. I'm Richard Dolan, and I will be very, very happy to see you all next time. If you do like what you see here, hit the like button. Why not? It doesn't cost you a thing. Just hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, all that stuff. You know the drill. And I will see you again really soon. In the meantime, let's keep fighting the good fight. Later.